Welcome to another episode of the Urban Wall Street Project. Of course, I'm your host, Earl Christian III, and today I really want to talk about something that's really serious amongst urban American communities, and it's definitely going to be it's a hindrance, and it's a situation and a crisis that needs to be addressed. Of course, I'm going to title this the Setup Part 2, Education versus School, School versus Education. Setup Part 2, who rules urban schools? That's really what it's about. Education versus schooling, who's in charge? I chose to talk about this topic this evening because many of us in urban America feel like it's the responsibility of the school, the teachers, and we don't recognize what we're here to do. Well, as an administrator in an urban school and working with some kids, I'm realizing that things are not the same as they were when I was a kid, maybe when you were a kid. Times have changed. The standards that we hold our students and our children accountable have been higher and have been increased. But what they're given to attain those standards seemingly is decreased. So I want to talk about it. So as I said, the topic of the day is education versus school. Who rules urban schools? The first question I want to know is who rules urban schools? Now when I say that, you might ask, what do you mean? You have teachers, there's principals, there's deans, there's administrators. Well, I'm a dean for an after-school program, and I give back to the community here in New York City. Sadly enough, though, the power to be a disciplinarian, the power to enforce rules and regulations according to school laws and mandates is out of the hands of teachers. Students these days are completely unruly. They lack discipline. They lack respect. And it may not be across the map in all urban public schools or all public schools. I'm sure it's not like that in private and Catholic schools. I mean, all schools have their issues, but I really want to talk about this because there's a problem. And the reason I call it a setup is because education and school is where you're supposed to be able to go to learn what you need to get the necessary tools to accomplish the goals and aspirations that you may have. But I want to ask this question, and all you sitting at home, ask yourself the same question. When you were in school, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, did you have textbooks? Did you have textbooks that enabled you to go home and study? I did, and I'm sure you did. But here we are in a new millennium when spending allegedly is up. As I was reading in a New York paper today, New York's #1 in school spending. So here I live in a state where New York is #1 in school spending, but the students in these urban public schools don't have textbooks. No textbooks. So how is it that we expect our students to achieve excellence, to compete in this ever-increasing and ever-competitive society if they cannot go home and study, to retain the information, to memorize the information? That's a serious situation. I talked to some students and they said, you know, I feel I could do a lot better if I had a textbook, but I don't have a textbook. Or even in school, students don't even have their own individual textbooks. Sometimes you have to share. My education is my education. Your education is your education. Your child's education is your child's education. So how do we share? Sharing is good. But when I want to come home at night and study with my mother, I want to study with my father, I need a textbook. The setup. Who's responsible for urban public schools not having sufficient textbooks that students can take home and study? Is it a fear that the books won't come back? Is it a belief that kids can't take care of the books? Is it a belief that kids may not even want to study from the books? Irrespective of who believes what, the bottom line is this. If our children are going to have a fighting chance, they need textbooks. They need to be able to come home with their parents and study. To not have students in middle school, which is some of the most formative years and the kind of the most critical years in between elementary and high school, to not have textbooks that will enable you to retain information, study information, learn, go over information with their parents, and reread and revisit on a daily basis is a problem. When I was in college, professors said you should study 3 hours for every credit. So an hour for every credit. So if you have a 3-credit class, you should study 3 hours. So we have students that have math for 2 periods, they have history for a period, they have science for a period. But when they go home, they can't study for 2 or 3, 4 hours. Now some people can say, well, they can study from their notes. Unfortunately, a lot of our kids don't know how to take notes Why? Because another part of the setup, writing is no longer taught. Writing is no longer a part of the general curriculums in urban public schools for whatever reason. It's too hard, whatever the case may be. But here's the situation. A lot of high schools require you to write essays. Pretty much all colleges require students to write essays. So if urban public school students do not have writing as a part of their curriculum, and they're not learning parts of speech, they're not learning how to put together an essay, they're not learning how to spell. Trust me, I know, because I've read some of the papers. I've looked at papers and I've listened to students. And a lot of kids cannot write and they cannot read well. So if you cannot write well, how do you write to get into college? Or are you being systematically conditioned not to be prepared to go to college? My opinion, seems like the system is working to keep Latino and African American kids or kids in urban public schools. That may mean poor whites, poor Asians, poor Arabs, Indians, whoever the case may be. It's definitely seemingly fall on economics. So you want to talk about that. You want to address it in your home. What's not happening in my school? Another question I want to ask is this. A lot of times we talk to kids and I talk to parents and they feel as if, well, the school's job. I send my child to school, that's your job. Or sometimes parents may call, it's your job. Here's a news flash. It's not the principal's job. It's not the teacher's job. It's not the aide's job to make sure your child gets what they deserve and they need. Yes, that's their job technically, but it's your job as a parent, a guardian, a grandmother, uncle, aunt, brother, sister, to go over it. Find out, do you have homework? Did you do your homework? What kind of homework do you have? Did you get a test today? How'd you score in a test? Let's go over your test. There has to be a greater input from parents with regard to their child's education. The setup. Your setup is send your child to school and let us take care of his education. You go to work and you take care of your bills. Sadly, when your child goes to school, I'm going to tell you, if you have a child in a public school or urban public school in the city of the Bronx, New York, they may not be getting what they deserve. They may not be getting what they need. Now, I'm pretty sure that these issues are probably common across the map in urban public schools. But one of the problems for me is the fact that we spend so much money. I'm reading the paper today, and it says New York spends nearly $15,000 per student. $15,000. Now, I don't know how that breaks down because I don't see the budgets of education. But I would assume that books, materials, all of these things would be available readily for students, but they're not. Why not? How many times have you gone to your school and asked your principal, the teacher, what's going on? I feel like my child is being set up to fail. Some parents feel that way. And the question you have to ask is your child being set up to fail? Well, let's think about it. My child doesn't have books to study from at night. That's a minus. My child needs discipline. Unfortunately, the powers that be in the educational administration have removed any form, seemingly, of disciplinary actions from teachers and administrators, meaning teachers cannot speak to students in a condescending tone or stern tone. I've heard students literally tell a student, I'm going to F you up, get the F out of my face, this is some bull, y'all already know what it is. And a variety of negative words that should be coming out of a child's mouth. Getting up in a teacher's face, pushing the teacher, throwing things at teachers. And the teachers have to sit there. Teachers can't say anything. Teacher tell a child, oh, that's foolish, or that's ignorant. The child feels embarrassed. He can run and lie to the administration. Investigation may ensue. But seemingly the teacher's going to lose their job based on the words of a student who's not even a credible student. But they could be, where they're not being set up. So what are we going to do? I once learned when I was in college, we can no longer allow the primary educators of our people, or the prime oppressors of our people, to be the primary educators of our children. It is our responsibility as well, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters. I'm a father. I have a 7-year-old son. And I'll make sure that his teachers know who I am, that he knows that I know his teachers, that he knows that his teachers know who I am, that I'm checking his work, that I'm making sure he's not being set up unconsciously. You need to do the same thing, mothers and fathers, because I'm going to tell you, your child is not getting what they need. They're not going to be able to compete as we move into this millennium. I have students in 8th grade that cannot write a sentence trying to go to high school. I have students that cannot spell, that don't know parts of speech, have no idea how to study, have poor study habits. But all of these things are things that are learned. These are things that are learned in school. So when I said education versus school, I want to talk about it. Is it the same? Are they synonymous? And I don't think so. Because there are a lot of students who are going to school every day. Many of them don't even have books. Flat backpacks, a piece of paper in their back pocket does not constitute someone that's wanted to be educated. But they're in school because there's nowhere else for them to go. They can sit in class and not do anything. They can be disrespectful, unruly, disruptive. Don't have to do work, but nothing's happening. And I wonder if that's the same across the map in suburbia. I don't know. I doubt it, but anything's possible. But as an urban resident and as the Urban Wall Street Project, my goal is to try to eradicate some of the disparities and the just atrocities, as far as I'm concerned, being imposed upon urban American children. This setup is a serious situation because kids don't know. They don't recognize that it is not becoming to be disrespectful. Because at some point in time, you're going to need a letter of recommendation. So these kids are being conditioned to be disrespectful, to lack integrity, to lack self-respect, to lack discipline. So they go to school reckless. Now, parents come to school sometimes, and their excuse for why their child is that way is because, oh, my child's going to call ACS, or they're going to call the system, or they're going to take my child away. Well, here's a news flash. Listen to the setup. Once upon a time, schools could be disciplinarians. Once upon a time, parents seemingly could be disciplinarians without any, how should I say, legal ramifications. So now, teachers don't have that authority. Things are getting bad. Parents are afraid, ironically, of their children calling ACS or civil service or whatever the case may be because they take them away. So what happens with the setup? The setup has students, youth, minors, individuals that don't know whether they're coming or going, the power to shut their teacher down, to have the parent nervous about calling a system. So they become reckless. So you have children growing up with no discipline, no structure, no respect for authority. So they programmed. Now they become adults. They're 18, 19 years old, and they're in urban America because they don't know how to get out. They can't because they've dropped out of school or they haven't had adequate materials to get what they want. And now they fall victim to criminal activity or profiling or whatever the case may be that has them in a detrimental situation. If your child is not programmed by you, it's going to be programmed by the system. Now, some people complain. The system doesn't work. The educational system doesn't work. Well, actually, I think the educational system does work. Because for years, students, seemingly in urban schools, have been getting the same thing or less. So the system works for some, but it doesn't work for others. Now, if the system is created specifically that way, then you have to be able to address that. A lot of the things that's going on, I see in urban American schools and public schools, no one wants to talk about. We can't say this, or you can't say this, because this, that, and the third. And sadly, it's all about money. Because programs function by monies and grants and in conjunction with the schools, if you rub the school the wrong way or you ruffle some feathers, you may lose your funding. So the loss of funding keeps us from being proper administrators and facilitators of truth, justice to our children, in my opinion. I wish some of you had the opportunity to go into a junior high school or a high school and just listen to the conversations. Listen to the dynamics. Listen to the attitudes. Observe the interaction with students and children, and you'll be sadly enlightened by the lack of support, by the lack of respect, and it just baffles my mind. So it's really important that, that I talk about this. So what can we do, families? What can we do? I've had parents say, I don't have time to come into school, I'm working. How do you not have time when your child is being set up? You have to know that if your child comes home from school and they don't have homework, that's a problem. If you've never seen a report card, that's a problem. If you've never gone to open school night, that's a problem. If you're not visiting your child's school once a month, that's a problem. If you don't know what your child's teacher's name is, classroom is, or what school they may be a part of, that's a problem. And I say that because if you're not in New York and you're in a city where one school is one school, then it's not applicable. But here in New York, we have so many students and lack of space that there are schools that have been converted to 2, 3, 4 schools. So you might have one school on the 3rd floor, another on the 2nd, and another on the 3rd. One on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. How do you come to school and not know where your child is? How do you come to school and not know where your child is? How do you not know your child's teacher's name? How do you not know your child's classroom? Some parents don't even know the child's grade. Trust me. You'll be like, no, it's not possible. It's possible. I've seen it. That's the setup. We are perpetuating and contributing to the setup. Now, maybe not consciously, but by our lack of consciousness, by our lack of commitment and dedication to ensuring that our children are getting what they deserve and what they need to compete, we are contributing to the perpetuation of these atrocities. It's demoralizing to look at a child and a child still feel that because he's black, that's the reason that he doesn't know how to do the work. And because that kid is white, or because that kid is Asian, or because that kid is Indian descent, they're smarter than me. That's sad. In 2008, United States of America, the United States of America, undivided, with justice and liberty for all. That's an atrocity. Somebody needs to speak about it. Fortunately for me, I'm not afraid to talk about it. Fortunately for me, I'm not afraid about losing a few dollars, because it's much more important that I save youth of urban America and this youth in general. Make it a conscious understanding that our kids do not have what they need. So how do we fix that? Some people say, oh, write your congressman and this, that, and the third. Some of those things might be right. I think more importantly, parents. There's PTAs. Get up in the school. Call your teachers. Pop in on your child's school. Understand something. There's no school in this country that will tell you you can't come to the school at any given time to see your child. That is your child. If your child doesn't become a success, they'll be sleeping on your couch. Not the principals, not the deans, not the superintendents, not a UFT president. They'll be in your home, causing destruction for you, turmoil for you, headaches for themselves, because they're not properly prepared to stand on their own 2 feet and sustain their lives as responsible adults. Some people might think, oh, that's a little bit extra. It's really not that serious. Trust me, it's that serious. I deal with students every day. And I'm telling you, my brothers and sisters, our kids are losing. They are losing in this battle because they don't know that the deck is stacked so much against them. They are losing in this battle because no one will tell them the truth for fear of retaliation, for fear of being tossed in a rubber room and just waiting until your investigation is cleared. So I have to understand that, and I empathize and I sympathize. But to what degree and to what expense are we going to continue to allow it to happen? I've been working with public school students, urban school students for the past 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And it's not getting better. It's not getting better. They'll present the scenario that the test scores are up and schools are doing great and camaraderie among students and teachers and as well. And that may be one school, somewhere else, another school. But I've visited several schools. And it's not what the media or the administration might want you to believe. I'm familiar with a public school, urban school here in New York, wherein the principal, in my opinion, or the administrators, not really concerned about the school. When the news is up in your school all the time, or you're on the news all the time talking about the school and big up in your school and talking about all the changes happening in the school, and you're in the front of newspapers with students, but those very students that's on the newspaper with you smiling, you know that you're going to be expelling or suspending the next day for the action, but you're utilizing it to make it look good. I think that's sad. I think it's appalling. I think it's sad when in urban America there's not a lot of urban folks educating the children. Most of the people in our schools, I'm going to tell you something, they care to the degree that 2:30 comes, 3 o'clock. And seemingly the students, the teachers that care the most, either they get let go, or the students are very disrespectful. And it's just sad. Now, I'm not saying this applies to your school. I'm not saying this applies to your city. I'm not saying it applies to you. But understand something right now. Families, urban America, black, white, Asian, Latino, Indian, whatever your scenario, it is time for you, us, we to come together. Hold the school systems accountable. Do not allow them to continue setting up our children. Graduation rates at an all-time low. What is that about? This is New York City I live in, the financial capital of the world. Though 95% of the people here clearly are probably financially illiterate. And if not 100% of urban America is financially illiterate. That's a problem. We have to address it. I want you to understand that I have nothing but love, compassion for everybody in America, across the globe. I have people watching my show all across the world. And I wonder if kids in other regions go through the same thing. But I'm going to say this to the kids too, because it's not always the administrators, and it's not always the teachers, and it's not their parents. Students, is a reason that your parent's the parent. It's a reason the administrator is the administrator. It's a reason that the elder is the elder. They know more than you. They can provide greater wisdom, greater guidance, generally. Understand that teachers don't necessarily have to like you. You don't have to like them, but don't fall victim to the setup. Don't allow the inability of the teacher to be a disciplinarian to lead you to be disrespectful or disruptive because you know no one can touch you or you feel untouchable. And so what? Send me to the principal's office. It's nothing. It's no big deal. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. They don't have to touch you. But know this. If you spend your academic career wanting to be rude and unruly, do work when you want, walk out when you want, not be on point, there will be someone that will be touching you. They may be the boys in blue, or black and white, or green and yellow, or whatever the color of the police department in your city. Because they don't pull no punches. They don't ask why. They don't make reservations. If you're in the wrong, you get dealt with. When you're in the wrong in school, accept your responsibilities. Talking back to teachers, disrespecting teachers, disrespecting your households is not cool, man. The setup is real. I know you might not understand it, you might not see it, but the setup is real. If adults can't give you discipline, if your parent can't give you discipline, and not because they can't, but they won't give you discipline because of the fact that they fear legal actions or whatever the case may be, then you have to understand that it's very important that you be mindful of yourself. That you understand that what you're here to do in school is to get the knowledge. Don't allow society to set you up. Don't allow your neighborhood to set you up. Don't allow the hood to set you up. Don't allow your lack of integrity, self-esteem, and self-respect to contribute to you being set up. Anything you want to do, you can achieve in this world, but you need to be educated. Now, I'm not saying you need to spend your whole life in school, but you need to be educated. Now, if you think school and education is the same, that's on you. If you think it's different, that's on you too. But you decide. My goal is to make you think. I needed to take this time out to talk about this. I'm hopeful that some people can understand what I'm talking about. I'm hopeful that some people can realize that urban public schools are in trouble. Urban America, it's our responsibility to save them. It's our responsibility to be the beacons of change that we want to see. It's our responsibility to hold administrations accountable. It's our responsibility to hold the state accountable, lawmakers, politicians, whoever's responsible for funding that's supposed to go to your school, who's ever responsible. Hold them accountable. Do not be afraid. There's nothing to fear. The fear is in not holding me accountable and not getting what you want and then losing for the rest of your life. The setup is real, y'all. I could go on and on and on about it, but I have 30 minutes. But it was really passionate, and I wanted to take some time to talk about it. As always, this is the Urban Wall Street Project. We want you to be prosperous. We want you to be progressive. We want you to be successive. But I want you to have integrity. Keep your head up. Keep watching. Be mindful. Maintain some dignity, some self-respect. Parents, get up in the schools. Hold them accountable. Do not let them set your child up. It's the Urban Wall Street Project. I'm your host, Earl Christian III. Till next time, peace. Read the papers.